Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, anybody out there who wants to get to the bottom of why America is being pummeled by all these young millenniums who want a socialistic country. Greg Anthony here. That's all we're going to talk about today, because it's amazing to me. By the way, you're listening to the Investigative Journal, and this is a long-running internet show that centers itself on the Vatican-led New World Order, all its tentacles, all the reasons why no one in this country really is going to ever deal with the root problem. And the root problem we're talking about today is socialism in America. Can you believe it? Can you think back? I don't know how many of you have been on this earth for at least more than 25 years. Can you imagine if this discussion was held back in 1950? You know something? There were discussions. Remember? McCarthy came forward. And back then, anybody who talked about socialism, communism, they were banished from the conversations. They were banished from any type of work. Remember the lists and all of this garbage? Now, this young Democratic Congresswoman wants to take a list of people who don't agree with socialism, so it's gone full circle. But why is it happening? Isn't it interesting if you think about it? Right before the end of, around Christmas, I didn't hear about any of this stuff. No, all for the last 2 years, all I've heard was Trump, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all of a sudden, as soon as this orchestrated effort, you see, they had this plan to get the Democrats back in the control of the Congress. All of a sudden, that's all you hear on both the left wing and the right wing radio stations and news outlets. Socialism, socialism, socialism. And what do you think they're planning? They are planning for socialism. Yes, they are. They are planning, and my dog's telling you that. She doesn't like it. You hear her barking against it? Yes, and she's got on a red Make America Great hat. And you know what? None of her dog friends really discriminate against her. What's wrong with making America great? Forget about Trump. But what's wrong with it? I think it'd be great if more people work, if people are happier, if we have a peaceful society, and everybody minds their own business and stays in their country, travels for good reasons, trades for good reasons. I see no problem. But you see, the Jesuits can't have that. So where did this socialism come from? Did it come from a couple really smart-aleck freshman Congress women and men who are now trumpeting socialism? All of a sudden, they have this huge new plan. Where do you think they got it from? Well, they got it from the Jesuits, and the Jesuits are behind it. And see, the dog agrees. My service dog who protects me from the Jesuits agrees with me. That's the one who protects me from them. And anytime any come near or I start talking about them, she wants to get her 2 cents in, and she protects me. But anyway, what do you think? This just came out of the blue? Or, you know, when you heard about socialism in the past, it's always been fringe groups, etc., etc. But now, what do you have? You have Venezuela in the news every day about people starving, and Maduro's there, the president who's a socialist dictator, etc. Now you got people in America who want socialism. And so what do you think's happening? The Jesuits want socialism. And where did it come from? Does anybody talk about the roots of socialism and communism? Now, our great historians, they love to say it was, these Russians, this Lenin and Marx, and all these people had these great ideas. But no, it started long before that. In the 17th and 18th centuries, the Order of the Jesuits began a system of missionary work called reductions. Now, the reason, they said, was to Catholicize native peoples in Spain, Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, America, Paraguay, etc. And these were the beginnings of communist and socialist ideas of human society that dominated the 20th century and now has our country by the throat. Now, there's a book called The Footprints of the Jesuits by R.W. Thompson. Many people know about it. But, people who are supposed conspiracy theorists like me. But the mainstream doesn't talk about it. But there are red flags of socialism. Yes, red flags of socialism. The hellish vapor. Let me read this. This is, let me see where this comes from. Now, I gotta make this larger. As you get older, you can't see. This was the sword which Marx refers to as Das Kapital, the Communist Manifesto, and the doctrine of the proletarian revolution, the Communist Bible, so to speak. But do you think he thought of that on his own? Do you think Alessandro Ocasio Cortez decided to move this new Green Deal and socialist movement on our own? Do you think Bernie Sanders, he started this back in the last elections to get people used to the idea. But do you think Bernie Sanders has any backing on this and who he really talks to? Bernie Sanders is interesting because his grandparents and parents were from Poland, Holocaust survivors. And wouldn't you think a Polish guy would do this? Yeah, they got it all ass backwards, don't those Poles? Yes, they do. And I'm a Pole. What about Copernicus? He gave you the heliocentric theory that the Earth is round and spins around the sun. He's got it ass backwards, another Pole. I'm telling you, don't trust these Polacks. But anyway, what about Vladimir Ledikowski, the Jesuit general, who was in the pocket of, Stalin, had Lenin killed, and in the pocket of everyone who was trying to fund the Bolshevik Revolution, get Stalin into power so they could wipe out the Orthodox Christians. Now, here's something. I want to read something from Revelation 6, 3-4. And when he had opened the second seal, who's opening this? I heard the second beast say, "Come and see." And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him, red communism, to him that sat there to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another. And there was given unto him a great sword. That's what do you think's going on? The red sword, the red horse is over in Venezuela and it's galloping quickly to America. The government established. Now, I'm taking this from R.W. Thompson. The government established by them in Paraguay was essentially a monarchy. This was the Jesuits. Okay, so do we realize they went over there supposedly to Catholicize the Paraguay indigenous people in the 1600 and something. And really what they were doing is testing a monarchy, how to control these natives. Okay? And maybe we could turn it into a system to control other people. So, the government there, established by the Jesuits on the order of the Vatican, was essentially a monarchy there in Paraguay. These poor indigenous people get run over by what the American Indians called the Black Robes. They realized who these people were, and it could not have been otherwise. Under the principles of their constitution, under the false name of a Christian republic, it was to all intents and purposes be a theocratic state, so constructed as to free it from all European influences, except such as emanated from their superior at Rome. You got to give me a little credit. I spent 7 years there, right in the belly of this beast. Didn't know what from what when I first got there. And I took a lot of time to realize what the hell are they doing. And you got to take experience sometimes over these talking heads on TV and all of these historians who are writing a history that really isn't what happened. They change it for their own, to the victor go the spoils. All the intercourse they had with the church and the Pope was through him, and whatsoever commands he gave were uniquely obeyed by them, without stopping to investigate or concerning themselves in the least to know whether the church and the Pope approved or disapproved of them. In order to impress the natives with the idea of their independence and their superiority over the monastic orders and the church, they practiced the most artful means to persuade them to hold no intercourse with either Spaniards or Portuguese at the time. So they went in there basically, discussed this and made sure that the Spaniards and the Portuguese at the time had no control over these indigenous people, upon the ground that they could not do so without encountering the example of their vices and immoralities. The unsuspecting natives were easily seduced by acts of kindness, and the result was, in the course of a brief period, they succeeded in establishing a number of what we call the Paraguay reductions. Let me explain it to you. Did you hear what I said? They seduced these natives. And this is not theory. This is factual history if you want to take a look at what was happened. It's written, they write it themselves. And much of it's probably hidden in the Vatican archives. But what we do have, we know that they went there with the intention to seduce them by acts of kindness. And isn't exactly what what's her name? AOC, they call her? You've really arrived, right? When you are called by your initials or by one name. Did you notice that in America? That when you really say, oh, AOC did it, or Cher did it, or Sonny did it, or he was Sonny Bono, didn't get to one name, or Madonna, or Lady Gaga, okay? When you get to one name or initials, you're there, boy. You're really there. So she's there, right? And within a matter of months. Who do you think put her there? What do you think? I made a little connection that should be thought about. Okay. We know that the Jesuits in the Vatican, through these tests with the natives during the 1600s, actually created socialism and communism and then passed it on. Now, it's now at the throats of American people who want nothing to do with it, really, except for those who are being seduced by these acts of supposed kindness. Right? But my little connection first. Where did this girl come from? She's 29 years old. When I heard her give her first speech, she didn't even know what the three branches of government were. Now, she's flashy. She talks a good game. She's been given the microphone on both the left and the right, for good reasons, because their Jesuit superiors demand it. And she's pushing this new Green Deal and socialism on America. Now, who supports her? She's a rookie congressman. She's got over 100 other congressmen and women supporting her. She's got 8 of the 10 Democratic presidential nominees so far. That'll grow to maybe 25 or 30 supporting this. But who's supporting her in the Senate? Now, the normal reaction for people when they want to decide whether she is controlled by the Jesuits, and I say this is not really that important because you can go to any school and be working for them. It just depends on who you are, where you come from, and what your agenda is. But she's from Boston University in Massachusetts, okay? Not Boston College. Don't get them confused. Boston University is a larger institution. It's public, but it's in Boston. Now, who's supporting her in the Senate? Technically, Boston University is not a Jesuit organization. But who is the first senator to support her? It was the longtime congressman and now senator from Massachusetts, Senator Markey. Now, where does Senator Markey come from? He's been around since the 70s in liberal Boston, right? Massachusetts. Markey graduated from Boston College, a Jesuit university, and then Boston College Law School, a Jesuit law school. So who do you think, why did he support her first? Is there some kind of connection there? Yeah, of course. And I guess we could spend hours and hours and hours, trying to figure it out, but you'll never get it until you get down into that tunnel between Georgetown University and the White House, where they all meet and they discuss it. And you can either bug them or tape them or something, because otherwise we're going to have to go on a lot of circumstantial evidence, because, folks, they are a secret organization. You forget that. Yes, what is a secret organization? They don't tell you what they're going to do they? But you get a lot of that when you're a lawyer. When you're a lawyer and you're working on a case, a lot of things sometimes don't add up, like 1, 2, 3, and 1 and 1 is 2, etc., etc. So you have to kind of use some kind of, you have to put the dots together behind the scenes, the circumstantial evidence, and then you have to draw some kind of conclusions that make sense, along with documented evidence. And that's what we do here. Now, I've said for a long time, ever since I started this story, and I came from the mainstream media, why isn't this story talked about publicly just as any other idea is talked about? It makes just as much sense, or even more. The only reason I can conclude is that it is hidden, and the people that control the media and the politicians are working for this very same group. Now, getting back to AOC, Miss Cortez, she's basically seducing her 3 million followers on YouTube or whatever she does with acts of kindness. And what do I mean by acts of kindness? She's doing what the Jesuits did to the natives in Paraguay in the 1600s. She's saying to them, listen, we're going to give you free college. We're going to give you free work. You're going to be, once you leave, the government will give you a job. And even if you don't want to work, we're going to pay for it. So you don't have to work, and we're still going to give you money. We're going to give you free food. That's working in Venezuela, isn't it? These people are getting like a cup of rice and lentils, and they're starving to death. But Americans think, no, we're going to get 3 good meals a day. But then she goes on to say she wants to get rid of cows. Why? She wants to get rid of them because of cow flatulence. Now, cow flatulence is really cow farts. And that supposedly causes methane gas and pollutes the environment. And she wants to then get rid of all your cows, all your cars, all your airplanes. And, of course, she doesn't want you to eat hamburgers. She said it's not good to eat. We should not be eating hamburgers. But there was a picture of her in her office with her aide eating a hamburger just the other day. She also lives in a very plush apartment. She makes $180,000 a year. She flies in private planes. She drives, gets chauffeured around in cars. So what's she talking about? She's asking you to do something she'll never do, but she's seducing these 3 million followers and the rest of the people in America who say, yeah, socialism would be great, free medical care. Do you know what free medical care is like? Just go to a country that does it. You don't get good medical care. Why do you think people rush to America to get their medical care taken care of? Because it's better. Once you allow doctors to work for the government, everything deteriorates. Timing. It takes forever to get an appointment. Trust me. I know that from other countries, and I watch people who go to doctors here in countries where they have socialism, socialized medicine, and it's a nightmare. Because they spend more time trying to get an appointment than actually getting cured. So if America wants, socialized medicine, they're doing it in a nice way. They're not saying that. They're saying Medicare for all. Well, let me tell you something. It'll be terrible, and you won't have your insurance companies anymore. Your employers will not be allowed to insure you. The government will take control of everything. And once they take control of your health, they got you by the you-know-what. And I'll tell you, lifespans in America will go down. Although they're seducing you with kindness. We're going to give you everything. Just like they seduced the Paraguayans, the Paraguayan natives, the indigenous people of Paraguay, who really in the end found out what was going on. And it wasn't pretty. But going back to that, the Jesuits trying to figure this out, because you have to understand that the Vatican and the Jesuits, they play ball with anybody. They play ball with dictators. They play ball with, democratic countries, with people in countries like ours that are republics. Yes, they don't care, because the ends justifies the means. And the Vatican and the Jesuit, you can find it in their own writings. I'm not making it up. I'm not even using circumstantial evidence. You can find it in their own writings. Their government of choice is fascism. Now, let me give you an idea. Now, remember when I told you a long time ago, we were on a mission, so to speak, to uncover all these occult and fascist symbols in places like the Hall of Congress, the Senate, White House, all these different memorials around the countries and state houses. And all of the things, all of the signs and symbols that show the Vatican created this country, all you got to look is Persephone on the top of our Congress building, on the halls of Congress. And you do a study on who that is. Why is that statue there? It should not be there for a democratic republic. Then you go into the Great Hall of Congress, and you're going to see the Speaker of the House at her podium. It's a woman now. But if you look to the left and to the right of that podium, you're going to see two symbols that really tell you what this is all about. Because they shouldn't be in a hall of a republic, a democratic system. There are two fasci symbols, just like the Roman fasci. Exactly like the Roman fasci. So they're telling you right there. Now, above the Senate, you have Pope, what was his name? Pope Clement the 13th or something? He's painted above there looking down. He was the biggest inquisitor pope ever. What is he doing there? I always ask this. Is it just, and I did ask it one time and they said, we had, the artist they hired was actually Italian. And he actually was commissioned by Rome at the time. You can check it out. The money was there. When they did Persephone in the U.S. Congress building, that statue on the top of our halls of Congress, it was during the time of Lincoln. And guess what? When they christened that, Lincoln wouldn't come out of the White House because he knew what it was about. Lincoln was one of the few presidents that understood the evil hand of the Vatican and basically was killed by them. They tried to kill him 3 other times. And we've done stories over and over again detailing every little aspect of that. And if you come away with any other conclusion that the Jesuits and the Vatican were not behind that killing, you're as dumb as a rock. Because there's so much factual evidence, hard evidence, that's been covered up that they did it. So we have all these signs and symbols of what the future is, who created this country really, and what they're doing to it now. But why don't people get on the wagon, get on the ball here and figure it out? Because they're too damn lazy. 2, they're too damn concerned about, things that really don't matter. 3, they listen to people with power because they think if you have power and you have money and you have a big audience, it must be right. So all the reasons are wrong. But that's why people in this country are going to be snowballed, are going to be seduced by this kindness of people like AOC and all these followers of socialism now. And in the end, you're going to get the same treatment those Paraguayan indigenous people got. You don't want to even know, but I'll tell you in the second half hour what happened to them. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the third temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn. The Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the third temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, boys and girls, back again for the second half hour of this Monday, and we're talking about socialism. Let me just say this. It's coming, folks. It might not be here in your lifetime. Well, it depends how old you are. If you're 2 years old, maybe. If you're my age or even half my age, it might not be. But it's going to be here. And I said this the other day, and I think it's true. If you came back to America 50 years from now, or Mexico, or any of these places, it's not going to look the same. And whether there's a big, huge war or whether they keep this weather control going, I mean, it's really ridiculous when you think about it. I guess if I say, oh, this big tornado killed 25 people in Alabama yesterday, oh, they'll say, well, that's happened before. But, it seems to happen more and more and more often. And I really don't like these people who, on the TV will, even on the left-wing Fox network, will kind of say, oh, people who think of weather control are crazy, conspiracy theorists. But if you look at weather control, they can do it. And it started a long time ago for military purposes. And I'm sure they've refined their ability to move storms, to create rain, etc., etc. And I'm not going to get into that today because we're talking about socialism and how the Jesuits used it in Paraguay, created this form of government. And really, what better way to control people than to do that? And that's exactly what they do. And it's not really earth-shattering to know that Pope Pius XII was the mentor of Hitler, that even Father Edmund Walsh from Georgetown University was instrumental in bringing Stalin to power, and that Stalin was, you should call him Father Joseph Stalin, Jesuit. Although, and back to a little bit from R.W. Thompson, he said, although this state was established under the pretense that it was necessary to protect the natives against the bad influence of the Spaniards and the Portuguese, the approval of it by the King of Spain was obtained by the promise that every adult must pay him the tribute of $1, a consideration of chief importance with him. So they're bribing him. And what do you think they're telling people now? I think there's millions of people in America who would love to be seduced with this kindness and socialism. And they're told this is to protect you against the bad influences of people who want to make America great again, of these conservatives who want to basically take away your human rights. But in fact, the human rights of the American people are being violated, and I don't see the ACLU coming to their rescue. So they're doing the same thing now. But they had Philip III in their pocket, right? Now Philip IV was equally disposed to favor the Jesuits. That's how they do it. So you don't think that Trump or Obama or Bush or any of these modern day presidents, and even those of the past, were in the pockets of these people? Why? It's the richest organization in the world, has 200 concordats or agreements with countries all over the world, whether they be dictatorships or not. And politicians, like moths to a flame, gravitate to money and power. And deceptive power. What better way to get people to do what you want? Just tell them, you got to come to us to be saved. You got to come to us for salvation, and we'll protect you. Now, Philip IV, back then, was equally in favor of the Jesuits, presumably for the want of proper information, for it would have required but little investigation at the time to have discovered that the only motive of the Jesuits for securing royal approbation in Europe was that they might ultimately acquire power to plot against European royalty itself when it should stand in the way of their ambition. To show how little obedience was paid to the public authorities of either Spain or Portugal, it is only necessary to observe that each reduction was governed by a Jesuit priest, supported by a vicar and a curate as assistants, but whose chief duty was not to help them and seduce them with, outwardly seducing them with kindness, but their real goal was espionage. Now, this governing father was under the orders of a superior, who presided over a diocese of 5 or 6 parishes, the supervision and management of the whole being lodged in the hands of a provincial, who received his orders directly from the general in Rome. The Jesuit general, right? If therefore the kings of Spain and Portugal supposed that the Jesuits in Portugal intended to pay fidelity to them, or to either of them, they were deceived, as in the course of events they discovered. They obeyed their general in Rome, him alone, not the Portuguese hierarchy. And the praise ought not be withheld from the Jesuits, that the natives who were thus brought under their influences, this is what's happening here. Just consider yourselves now, you're the natives, American people, and all the immigrants that have come there from wherever, that's all we are. I mean, from Poland, from Germany, from France, from Belgium, from Italy, from Mexico, everywhere. We're all just natives now to these people, and they're doing the same thing to us that they've done to the poor Paraguay natives. So they were better and more kindly treated than those who were compelled to submit to the dominion of Spaniards and Portuguese beyond the limits of Paraguay. They partook of their labors, of their amusements, of their joys, of their sorrows. They visited daily every house in which lay a sick person, whom they served as the kindest nurse. So they're getting better treatment, they think, from the Jesuits than they were from their own government. So what are they doing? So if you look at this as they have it set up as a little city or a community, but everything's given to them. Right? So they even visited houses to take care of sick people, whom government-controlled healthcare, right? Whom they served as the kindest nurse, and to whom they seemingly to be ministering everyone, like a ministering genie out of the bottle. By these and other kindnesses, they brought the native Paraguay Indians to look upon them with a feeling bordering on idolatry. They looked at them as gods who've come to save them from the evils of Portugal and Spain's hierarchy, just as they're coming to save you from the evils of all these conservative people and Donald Trump and all these other people in America, right? That's what you hear every day. But it's been done before. And I can't understand why people are falling for it. They visited daily every house. That's what they plan to do with you. By these and other kindnesses, they brought the Indians to look upon them with a feeling bordering upon idolatry. Let me give you an example of why they're doing the same thing. Let's just take a city like San Diego. We can go to a city in Ohio or Kansas where they have started programs now. See, they create homelessness with their policies. And then they come around and they figure out a way to solve it instead of basically, not creating the problem to begin with, and to provide a wholesome society so many of these people or no drugs wouldn't be homeless. So now what do you think they're going to do? Instead of getting rid of the drug situation, instead of putting these people on their own 2 feet to care for themselves, because beyond what the socialists say, I believe that 99% of people want to work, want to do good things for other people, and they don't want the government telling them what to do. But what do they do with these homeless people? Now they're building little houses for them. They're 200 or 300 square feet. And they're going to stick them in there. And they're going to say, we'll take care of you. It's not going to work. But they're doing it. And that's exactly what they did to these Paraguay Indians. They visited daily, all the time, provided them housing, just made them work for them. By these and other kindnesses. And by the way, the work that these Paraguay Indians did made in our dollars, made millions for the Jesuits. But these poor people, they got just basically a little bit to eat, just like they're getting in Venezuela, a little house to live in. And let them party. They could do their dances. They could, then we'll take care of your sick. But in the meantime, the Jesuits were making a fortune. By these and other kindnesses, they brought the Indians to look upon them as gods. But while they were their friends, they were also their sovereigns, their leaders, governed with absolute and unquestioned authority. That's what'll happen here in socialism. That's what Maduro's doing. I'm just giving you an example. That's what every dictator in communist Russia did. That's what Stalin did. And this was necessary. This was really necessary. Yeah, necessary. Okay, sorry for that little glitch. Had a little problem here getting everything straight on this radio station. But anyway, so we're talking about the Jesuits and socialism. And they made everything necessary, apart from this governing authority. Universal equality prevailed. The principles of socialism or communism, very much as now understood, were governed by these reductions. They were basically the same thing. Basically exactly the same. I told you these dogs do not like socialism, and I can't stop them. Let them speak. Maybe we can stop OAC and all these Jesuits from bringing this to our country. So basically, they partook in their labors, like I said, amusements, joys. They visited daily every house, and they were kind of like the ministering genie coming out of the bottle to help these people. By these and other kindnesses, they brought the Indians to look upon them with a feeling, like I said, bordering on being gods. But while they were friends, they were also their sovereigns, like I said, their governors. This was necessary and indispensable part of their system, which embodied the Jesuit idea of a Christian republic. The same fascistic type of republic that flies for Christianity today, Romanism, and more specifically Jesuitism, is militant Christianity, come into its own. It was in everything pertaining to the management of public affairs, an absolute monarchy, with all its powers centered in general at Rome, like I said. Everything necessary was given to them. for their material comfort and prosperity of the Indians, that was all the same. Each family had a portion of the land set apart for cultivation. They also learned trades, and many of them, both men and women, became experts. But the earnings of the whole were deposited in a common storehouse at each reduction, and distributed by the Jesuits in such portions to each individually as necessity required. That's what they want to do with the socialist plan here. Exactly like our Federal Reserve Bank system through the income tax. Even meat was portioned from the public slaughterhouses in the same way. The surplus produce remaining after these distributions was sent to Europe and sold or exchanged for wares and merchandise solely at the discretion of the Jesuits. Like I said, they were profiting. Everything was conducted in obedience to them, and nothing contrary to their orders was tolerated. Rigid rules of conduct and hours of labor were prescribed, and the violators of them were subject to corporal punishment. And that's exactly what they're going to tell us here. They're going to tell you when to work. They're going to tell you what you can eat. They're going to tell you where you can live, how you can travel. And then the labors of your profits, which will be doled out by the government, the labor being given to them, what's excess will be their profits. They're the ones that are going to be wealthy, not you. Houses of worship, colleges, and palatial residences for the Jesuit fathers were built by the common labor at the expense of the common treasury. Suffrage was universal, but the sanction of the Jesuits was necessary to the validity of this election. In fact, says Nicolini, this is interesting, the Jesuits substituted themselves for the state or the community, a fact which fully establishes the monarchical and theocratic character of them. And folks, they have not changed one bit. But in order to teach these confiding Indians and Paraguayans that obedience to authority was their chiefest duty, they were subjected to rules of conduct and intercourse, which were enforced with the strictest of severity. They were watched in everything. Wow. The searching eyes of the Jesuits being continually upon them. In fact, doesn't it sound like what they're doing today? Limiting your rights, enforcing the laws. More people in America are in jail than any other country, right? Yes. Okay, so you want to live like that? Not me. But in order to teach these people that obedience to the authority was the chiefest duty, I told you just what they did. It's just like the temporary police state. Remember the Patriot Act that was written by a Jesuit, a lawyer from Georgetown, Mr. Van Dam, prior to 9/11. That is, what's happened? Submissive obedience. That's what's going on right now, without the least semblance of manhood. Having thus completed this subjugation with these Paraguayans, energetic measures were adopted to render any change in their condition impossible. For this purpose, care was taken to exclude all other than Jesuit influences and to sow the seeds of disaffection towards everything European. So they're sowing the seeds now of everything that's American. You ever hear of people now? They hate America. Everything about it. Capitalism's wrong. It takes advantage of people. Our politicians are saying that every day. People are mimicking it every day. Back then they said everything towards the Europeans was terrible. The object being to surround them with a high wall of ignorance and superstition, which is going on today, which no European influence could overleap. Same here. Same like any kind of influence that we tell you on this show, or anybody in America that tries to trumpet this idea that socialism is not right, is met with this group of people, this wall of ignorance. And it even gets worse because many of the people that believe in capitalism have no idea that who is the founding fathers of this kind of organization, of what's really going on here. Back then they were instructed that the Spaniards and the Portuguese were their enemies, just like they're instructed today that anybody who believes in capitalism is your enemy. Anybody who believes in a Make America Great Again is your enemy. Trump has been put there to bring this out into the open. That's why he works for them. That the ecclesiastics, and back then the monks, the missionaries sent over by the church were, worthy of their obedience. The people that came over here were worthy of their obedience, and that the only true religion was that which emanated from their society and their approval. So they didn't let anybody in. It was even the Jesuits working against their own. If these simple-minded people were taught anything about the church, it was with the view of convincing them that the Jesuits represent all of its powers, authority, and virtue, and that whatsoever did not conform to their teachings were sinful and heretical. If they were told anything about the Pope, it was to represent, If they were told anything about the Pope, it didn't basically about the representation, it was to represent him as inferior to their general, who was to be regarded by them as the only infallible representative of God upon earth. That all other ideas should be excluded from their minds. So how could an organization that's supposedly working for the Vatican talk against it? That's what they do. That all other ideas should be excluded. They were not permitted to hold any intercourse whatsoever with Europeans, for fear, undoubtedly, they might hear there was a church at Rome and a pope higher than the Jesuit general. They were not allowed to speak any language but their own, so as to render it impossible to acquire any ideas or opinions except such as could be expressed by means of its limited number of inexpressive words. That is, to keep them entirely and exclusively under Jesuit influences. To sum up the whole, without further detail, the Indians were regarded as minors under guardianship. In this condition they remained for 150 years without the possibility of social or national development. You got to really study a Roman Catholic, Sir Thomas More, and his Utopia. And he's from England, right? And its influence on Marxist philosophy. Marxist Karl Kautsky argued in his book, Thomas More and his Utopia, that More's work was an early development of socialist ideas. Even the New Advent Catholic Encyclopedia admits in its article, Reductions in Paraguay. Okay, so we're back. A little interruption again. Having a little problem with this computer. But anyway, I want to finish this up. I only have a few minutes. But I think you get the drift of what I'm saying. We're talking about conditions. Let's talk about property. The economic basis for a sort of communism. The land and all that stood upon it was the property of the community. You see, that's what basically is going to happen. The land was apportioned among the people there, who allotted it to families under them. Agricultural instruments and drought and cattle were loaned from the common supply. So you're getting this idea that these people knew what they were doing. And this form of government has transposed into what they did in Russia. You got to understand that the Jesuit communism was the inspiration of Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto. And you also got to look at South American Jesuit reductions. Okay, just start Googling that and researching that. And you're going to find out that this is where it came from. This is who is behind it today. And if you want to stop it, at least understand where the problem begins. Where the problem begins. And we only got a couple minutes here. So anyway, I want you to go and research that a little bit. Now, Jesuit communism, socialism in America. Let's get back to a few things going on in this country. We talked about, all of a sudden, after Christmas, you heard this big, everything's socialism now. On the news, whether it be left wing or right wing. You didn't hear anything in the first 2 years of the Trump administration. They were setting the table for this by creating this America Great movement, right? setting the table. And now that they got the battle lines drawn, those of you who want to see America prosper, those of you who feel it's better to be run by the Jesuits' socialism plan that Cortez is bringing out here, as well as Senator Markey from Boston College, that's exactly what's happening. And the question becomes, who's going to win? Globalism or sovereignty, American sovereignty? I wouldn't put my money on American sovereignty because the deck is stacked against us. Hollywood, the government, basically, half the population or more, and most of the people who don't want it are getting old and will be gone soon. So I foresee a socialist America. I foresee a continent, this continent of North America, all at one. It wouldn't be hard to push over Canada and Mexico, right? America will lead the way. We are basically the military arm of the Vatican Jesuits. And so here we sit, trying to, at this late date, figure out who's behind it. This should have been done hundreds of years ago. We should have never fell for it when this country was formed. But we did, and it's only gotten worse. But, if you grew up in America like I did, you were always promised everything. Again, seducing you with kindness. Back in tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.